For the agenda for today, I'm not going to read it because we're short on time. Let's just get straight into it. The first thing we're going to mention to you is that Greg and David have been working very hard on training modules for the educator course. And I can see a really fun slide in front of me with that lists 13 topics. These are 13 modules. And all of the shooting has been done, and now we, as in Greg, is working on video editing nonstop. He will have a draft version done by the 19th when we have our student data privacy users group. They will be watching the video. These are, different modules. Now, this is intended for the relicensure course, which is required for relicensure, but we're going to we're going to have access to all of these modules for your training purposes, where you can use all 13 or none at all. I don't want to give away too much, but if you have seen the movie Billy Madison, who goes through school again, just picture David going through school again with each of these modules from kindergarten to 12th grade. And
all the way to graduation.
And then he has a really lovely graduation speech. And so with costumes and all. So we tried to make it a little bit fun. We put in some helpful information for educators, but we tried to make the video as short as or the series of videos as short as possible. I believe we're going to be about 40 minutes.
It's about 2 minutes of video, so hopefully like 20, under 30 minutes.
Greg is saying maybe it might be under 30. So we think shorter the better for educators, but we want to make sure that they have all the information that they need. The next thing on the agenda for today is talking about the LEA guidebook. And here you can see a list, or I can see a list. You can't see a list. Hey, David, how about let's copy and paste this into the chat. Yeah, that's a good idea.
You keep talking. Let me open the slide. I'll make that happen.
Look, I'm already done.
Oh, well, even better.
Okay, so I just listed the table of contents for the LEA guidebook. This will be done in draft form by the 19th for that user group to review. We will then make it pretty with some graphic designing, make it ADA compliant, and then we will let you know when it is available. It will be available in the month of July. Whether that's the beginning or the end, we're not quite sure, but it certainly will be done and out and delivered by July. I hope to also on demand print copies of this guidebook. The guidebook right now has a number of links in it, and we hope to make it so you can have a printed version of the guidebook and not need any internet service and have still access to all of the cited documents. Then again, I really like trees. What do you think of trees, David?
I'm a fan.
You're a fan. But some of us, learn differently. I certainly love to have something to hold. I like books instead of ebooks. So if you're that way, we want you to get the information however you learn best. And so those were the chapters. David, will you put in the information for the relicensure course in the chat too? I think there are 13. I think the numbers disappear. Oh, and look, I can share my screen now.
Oh, maybe you should start sharing your screen.
Oh, it just popped up. But let's see. Can you see my screen?
I see it.
Oh, wow. I don't know why this works now, but we're just going to go with it. Okay, so there's the guidebook. Let me move back. There is the training modules. Machines do fix themselves. They're very smart. Let's see. David.
Okay. So as those of you who were with us last year will recall, around October 1, we sent letters out to the superintendency saying, we need to see some compliance with board rule relating to student data privacy. We'll be doing a similar check this year, only we're trying to give a whole lot more notice. Hence, we're talking about it right now. We're going to be looking mostly for the same things. There are a couple of changes, and some of these were due to changes in statute. All of you, hopefully at this point, should have heard from me. I went through, there were changes to the requirements for a data governance plan. So I went through your current plans that I received last October, or if I never received anything, I went through your district or charter's policy manual to see if you had anything in there that met the prior requirements as well as the new requirements. And last month I would have sent you an email saying where it looked like you currently were at. Basically, if I were to do the check today, this is what I would say you still need to do. So hopefully you got that email. I've heard back from a couple of LEAs, saying it's like, oh, thank you for this. Like, we'll get to work on it this summer. But that was kind of the goal, is we wanted to give you enough time to be able to make the changes. We also, and we talked about this last time, are anticipating some changes to the functionality in the Metadata Dictionary. I'll talk about that in a moment. But one of the other things I think was always a question was, it's like, how often are we supposed to update this? And last year when we checked for October 1, we simply said, did you do anything? Is there at least one entry? Because that was very easy for me to go in and just check, see if, it was greater than 0. This year, I'm not entirely sure how it's going to look, if it'll just be something that you send over email, or we were hoping to use Qualtrics to collect a lot of this information, or if it'll just be built into the tool itself. But we anticipate there being just like a box or something where you will certify and say, we are complete as of October 1, that we believe everything in here is complete and accurate as of this date. We will probably be more interested in knowing then more about the process you used. We've heard anecdotally that, in some LEAs, they have like a spreadsheet and teachers enter the information there. In other cases, they've had to go and, actually have people get onto computers and figure out what's going on there because teachers would not fill out a spreadsheet. So we want that insight to understand, how you are accomplishing this and what problems are happening with it. So those are, for those two, the things we were hoping to kind of find out differently. Otherwise, we noticed that there were certain things either in FERPA or the Student Data Protection Act that we did not ask for last year, even though we probably should have. So FERPA requires that each year, if you are using the directory information exception, and you are not required to have directory information, but if you do, you have to notify parents of this. And so we've gotten a lot of questions about what is directory information here, what is directory information there. And we felt this could be greatly simplified if, as part of what you submit to us, you also just gave a link to your directory information policy. And the same goes for your annual FERPA notice, which is what you're supposed to annually give parents to notify them of their rights, as well as define what is considered a legitimate educational interest for the purposes of the school official exception. Now, last year, there was also a requirement to have a collection notice, except it was called the disclosure statement. It was very confusing because it was you disclosing what you were collecting, not disclosing what you were disclosing.
Sorry.
So in SB 207, we tried to clarify that by having it just called a collection statement. So it's basically a list collection notice, a list of here's the data that we collect. And so we have designed, and kind of what I want to do with all of this is I have some documents for you to look at, and it'll probably be easier if after this webinar I just sent them out so you could look them over and give feedback. Whitney mentioned we're going down to Richfield immediately after this webinar to meet with Q's, and I want to actually pull the documents up and talk about them. And we want some feedback because we made these for you. They're intended to be useful for you.
I've seen the drafts.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be very helpful. We want to have us do the bulk of the work.
Yes.
As much as we can do, but we don't know what all of your districts or schools collect. So you'll have to do some, but we want to do the vast majority.
And we know what you collect because we get some information from UTREX. And this is still somewhat imperfect because we recognize that certain charters, even though there's a place in Utrex for a K through 6 to send ACT scores, that field is probably going to be blank. So like I said, we'll send out a copy of this after this webinar so that you can look it over and provide feedback. But that's what it's based on, is we took what's in Utrex and we turned it into a document. So we're figuring that at least some of the information you'll probably have to fill in. We don't know how you store or collect your data. That could maybe be standardized, since I know like everyone uses an SIS, but I don't necessarily know all of the details. The law also called for something somewhat had more to do with sharing data and less with collecting data, but it was written into the section on this collection notice that if you have students in grades 9 through 12, there is supposed to be essentially an opt-in sheet where parents can say, I agree to have my students' data shared with the Utah Board of Regents, the System of Higher Education, to provide outreach for scholarship and higher education opportunities. Since it's written in, it says it's supposed to be a part of the collection notice, even though it's not. It's not a notice. I included it in the model because it is part of the statute. Though we are taking the point of view that you don't have to give it that way. You can give it some other way if that's what you want. They can be separate. I put it on a separate page in the document, but it is still a part of the entire document. But that is going to be a requirement for this next year, is that you need some way to, if you have students in grades 9 through 12, to allow parents to opt in to having, it's basically contact information, includes some things that LEAs currently are not sharing with the state, like student email addresses. We are thinking until we are able to automate a process, probably within Utrex, to make that happen, you're going to have to collect this and probably give it to the state via Move It, at which point we will then send it on to higher ed. So I imagine there will be lots of more questions about that and that process than a sheet of paper that says everything that is collected in Utrex. But that's all in there. And again, like I said, we'll be sending out more detailed information on this after this meeting, and you can give us feedback via email. Lastly, I had alluded to the Metadata Dictionary. Many of you are aware, if you've tried to get in it, that it is currently broken. There were some JavaScript issues that we are working on fixing. Mostly due to we were trying to have some upgrades put in, and then there was an unrelated issue and it caused the whole thing to break. So we're trying to revert it back to the good version so that then we can start putting the upgrades in. So if you've been in there recently, you'll notice that certain fields are grayed out. You can't enter anything, and they're required fields. I'm hoping within the next week or so, I've been in touch with our IT, and they have it fixed in the staging side of things. We just need to move the not broken version into production. I mentioned and have been mentioning for some time, we do have some upgrades that we've been working on. One of the big ones includes being a bulk upload. We anticipate pushing these upgrades out fairly soon, and probably also a new video. Greg and I are trying to determine how often I say slow motion metadata dictionary, because whenever anyone sees us, that's the one thing they say, that they love that. But it's going to be a very different tool, so that video is going to have to change in some way. And as mentioned last time around, USBE is hoping to take on a lot more of the data entry, particularly as it pertains to federal and state required data recipients and elements. We are just going to populate those for you so you don't have to. That is our goal, is to make it so that that's already in there. You just have to worry about the ones that are only being handled locally. And I will pass back to Whitney to talk about the webinar schedule.
Sure. I just wanted to remind everyone that we have these webinars the first Wednesday of every month at this time, but there's some exceptions. We have July where no one wants to really meet around July 4th. November is actually the time when we're going to have our second annual Student Data Privacy Conference. And January, I don't think anyone wants to meet the beginning of January either. So I put the dates there just in case you want to put that into your calendar. Maybe we should send a calendar invite for this to all the data managers. I tend to have it. We have a few different lists, so
that need to be consolidated.
well,
I think.
there's kind of there's the LEA Student Data Privacy Officers list through UEN, and that's kind of an open list for anyone that wants to sign up. You're going to get those emails, and that's the larger net. But this we also have a list of those that are just listed as data managers. So I usually cast the larger net for this. So anyway, we can send out calendar invites at least to the data managers. I just wanted to let you know what we're up to.
Busy summer.
It's well, this is just June.
Oh.
This isn't even July. So, and I think David and Greg and I didn't realize all the commitments that we have made until we looked at our June schedule. But we are very happy to participate in conferences. We know that June is a busy time for conferences, so I want you to know where we're going to be. And you can come and stalk us and ask questions if you'd like. So that's where we're going to be for June. Also, as I mentioned, you might want to think about saving the date already. Oh, it's like a wedding.
A little bit.
It's a wedding.
We have to send out an invitation before the actual invitation.
Oh, that'd be kind of clever.
Yeah.
So we're really excited to have this second annual Student Data Privacy Conference. We had a pretty good turnout, both in Salt Lake City and Cedar City. We've asked the Privacy Technical Assistance Center to come out, and they have agreed to come out, at least one person, maybe two, to both sessions. We're working on other speakers. It's kind of early, but I at least wanted to get the dates and locations out to you.
And actually, Greg and I were just talking about this morning, and in terms of like what we're talking about here is this webinar. If there are topics that are of interest to you, things you would like to know more about to make your job and life easier, as it pertains to data privacy, not to personal stuff, please reach out to us and let us know. We can start looking we can research it and give the presentation, or we can start looking for experts in that area. Just some ones that we were talking about that we thought like, oh, this would be really good, would be dealing with school safety issues. We know is very big right now, and how that ends up hitting data privacy. I think that's one where, I mean, Greg and I in our conversation this morning was like, that would be a really good thing to have some sort of session on at the conference. So let us know other ideas. Right now, we are still very preliminary. Like Whitney said, we just have dates. This conference is for you. It's to help you. So let us know what you want to hear about, and we can do our best to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think, is our last slide. We're ending a little bit early. Thank you for your patience with our technical problems this morning. We will have a new link out that we'll send for our next webinar, which is not in July.
No,
No.
because I read that slide.
Yeah.
Not that one. That one.
That's right. August 1st. So we'll have a lot to say then. Also, check your email. We will be sending out the links to the LEA guidebook and the educator relicensure course. Have a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday.
Bye.